I watched her throw a glass of water in my face, laughing as it dripped down my nurse's scrubs. She called me worthless, a nobody who'd never amount to anything. What she didn't know? My husband owned the hospital, and her father's company. Her whole world was about to crumble. Before I tell you how this entitled brat learned the hardest lesson of her life, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this story ends. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Emerson, and I've been a nurse at Metropolitan General Hospital for 3 years. Most people who know me see a simple woman in scrubs, working long shifts, taking the bus home, and living what they assume is an ordinary life. And that's exactly what I want them to see. The truth? I'm married to Christopher Ashford, one of the wealthiest men in the country. But nobody at the hospital knows that. I keep my maiden name at work. I wear a simple silver band instead of my actual wedding ring, which sits safely in a vault at home. I drive an old car to work and live like any other nurse would. You're probably wondering why someone married to a billionaire would choose to work at all, let alone keep it a secret. The answer is complicated, and it's tied to something that happened in this very hospital 7 years ago. My mother died here. She was a nurse too, the best nurse I ever knew. She taught me that caring for people wasn't just a job, it was a calling. When she passed away in the same halls where she'd saved countless lives, something inside me broke. But it also gave me a purpose. I wanted to honor her memory by following in her footsteps. Christopher understood. He's always understood. That's why he never pressured me to quit, even though I didn't need the money. But this story isn't really about me. It's about Vanessa Pierce and the day she made the worst mistake of her life. It was a Tuesday morning when Vanessa first walked through our hospital doors. Actually, walked isn't the right word. She stormed in like a hurricane, screaming at everyone in her path. She'd just had a cosmetic procedure at some fancy private clinic that had gone wrong, and now she needed our help to fix it. Her father, Gregory Pierce, was a well-known real estate developer in the city, the kind of man whose name appeared in newspapers and whose donations could make or break institutions like ours. I was assigned to her care, and from the first moment our eyes met, I could see the disdain in her expression. She looked me up and down like I was something she'd scraped off her expensive shoes. "You're my nurse?" she said, her voice dripping with disgust. "You look so poor. Don't you people have standards here?" I smiled politely, the way I'd been trained to do. "I'm here to take care of you, Miss Pierce. Let me know if you need anything." She laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "What I need is someone who doesn't look like they shop at thrift stores, but I guess beggars can't be choosers in this dump. I'd dealt with difficult patients before. You learn to develop thick skin in this profession, but there was something different about Vanessa. It wasn't just rudeness. It was a deep, genuine cruelty that seemed to bring her joy. Over the next few days, her behavior escalated. She would accidentally knock over water cups that I'd have to clean up. She'd call me at all hours for the most ridiculous reasons. Her pillow was too soft, the room was too cold, she didn't like the way I walked. Other nurses started avoiding her room, which meant I was stuck with her even more. Then came the day that changed everything. I'd brought her fresh water, making sure it was exactly the temperature she'd specified. Room temperature, not too cold, not too warm. I'd checked it 3 times because I knew she'd complain otherwise. I walked into her room with a genuine smile, trying to start the day on a positive note. "Good morning, Miss Pierce. I have your water." Before I could finish my sentence, she snatched the glass from my hand, took one sip, and her face twisted with rage. "This is disgusting. Are you trying to poison me? Is this how you treat patients here?" "Miss Pierce, I made sure it was exactly how you—" "Shut up," she screamed. "I don't want to hear your excuses." And then, in one swift motion, she threw the entire glass of water directly in my face. The cold liquid hit me like a slap. It soaked my hair, my scrubs, everything. Water dripped down my face and onto the floor. I stood there, frozen, unable to process what had just happened. I could hear gasps from the hallway. Other nurses and patients had witnessed it, but Vanessa wasn't done. She started laughing, a high-pitched, mocking sound that echoed through the room. She pulled out her phone and took a picture of me standing there, drenched and humiliated. "Oh my God, this is perfect," she cackled. "Wait until my friends see this. A pathetic nurse who can't even bring water correctly. This is going straight to my social media." I wiped the water from my eyes, my hands trembling. Not from fear, from the sheer effort it took to control myself. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her exactly what I thought of her. But I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath and spoke quietly. "I'll get you fresh water, Miss Pierce." "No," she said, her voice cold and sharp. "You'll stand there and apologize. On your knees." The room went silent. Even she seemed surprised by her own words, but then her face hardened. She meant it. "You heard me. Get on your knees and apologize for being so incompetent, or I'll make sure you never work in healthcare again. My father owns half this city. One phone call and you're done." I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw something that almost made me pity her. She was empty inside. All that money, all that privilege, and she was just a hollow, miserable person who could only feel powerful by making others feel small. "No," I said simply. Her eyes widened. "What did you just say to me?" I said, "No, I won't kneel for you. I'll bring you fresh water because that's my job, but I won't let you degrade me." Her face turned red with fury. "You'll regret this. Security!" Within minutes, the hospital administrator was called. Mr. Peterson was a nervous man who'd held his position for 20 years through careful political maneuvering. He rushed into the room, saw Vanessa's angry face and my wet scrubs, and immediately started apologizing to her. "Miss Pierce, I'm so terribly sorry. This is absolutely unacceptable. Emerson, apologize immediately." "Sir, she threw water in my face because—" "I don't want to hear excuses," he snapped. "The Pierce family has been generous donors to this hospital. Now apologize." I looked at him, then at Vanessa's smug face, and something inside me shifted. I'd been patient for 3 years. I'd kept my identity hidden, worked quietly, honored my mother's memory. But in that moment, I realized that sometimes silence isn't strength. It's just allowing evil to win. "No," I said again. Mr. Peterson's face went pale. "Then you leave me no choice. You're suspended pending investigation. Leave the hospital immediately." Vanessa clapped her hands together like a delighted child. "Finally, someone with sense. And don't bother coming back. I'm having my father buy more shares in this hospital. We're going to clean out all the trash, starting with you." I nodded slowly, maintaining eye contact with her. "We'll see about that." Something in my tone made her pause, but then she laughed it off. "What's that supposed to mean? You think you have any power here? You're nobody, a poor little nurse who's about to be unemployed. Maybe you should have been nicer to me." I didn't respond. I simply walked out of that room with my head held high, water still dripping from my hair. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and finally let the tears come. Not because I was hurt, though I was. Not because I was scared, though the situation was serious. I cried because I was angry. Angry at Vanessa, angry at Mr. Peterson, angry at a system that protected bullies with money while throwing away good people. I pulled out my phone and called Christopher. He answered on the first ring. "Hello, love. How's your day going?" I let out a shaky laugh. "It's been better. Christopher, I need to tell you something." I explained everything, the abuse, the water, the suspension. He listened without interrupting, but I could hear his breathing change. When I finished, there was a long silence. "Emerson," he said finally, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "Do you want me to handle this?" "Not yet," I said, "but soon. I need you to trust me on this." "Always," he replied. "But sweetheart, there are limits to what I'll tolerate. Someone hurt you. Someone humiliated the woman I love. That doesn't just go away." "I know. And it won't. But when we act, we do it right. Can you have someone gather information on Gregory Pierce and his daughter? Everything. business dealings, social media, all of it. Consider it done. But Emerson, if she comes near you again, she won't. Not for a while. She thinks she's won. But Vanessa wasn't satisfied with just getting me suspended. Over the next 3 days, she turned her attention to destroying me completely. The video of me standing there with water dripping down my face went viral on social media. Not nationwide viral, but enough that everyone in our city's social circles saw it. She'd captioned it, "When the help forgets their place, this nurse thought she could disrespect me, learn from her mistake." Her wealthy friends piled on in the comments. Strangers who'd never met me made judgments about my character, my abilities, my worth as a human being. Someone found out about the free clinic where I volunteered on weekends and started leaving horrible reviews, claiming I was incompetent. Then things got worse. The clinic's director called me, his voice heavy with regret. "Emerson, I don't know how to tell you this. We've lost our funding. The Pierce Foundation was our main donor, and they've pulled out completely. We have to shut down." My heart sank. That clinic served hundreds of people who had nowhere else to go. Homeless individuals, undocumented immigrants, people who'd fallen through the cracks of the healthcare system. "When?" I asked. "End of the week. I'm so sorry. I know this is because of what happened with you and Vanessa Pierce." After that call, I sat on my couch and stared at the wall. Christopher was away on business, and I felt utterly alone. Vanessa hadn't just humiliated me, she'd hurt innocent people who depended on that clinic, people who had nothing to do with our conflict. That's when I stopped feeling guilty about what was coming for her. Christopher returned 2 days later with a folder full of information. We sat at our dining table, and he spread out the documents. "Gregory Pierce is worse than we thought," he said. "His company has been cutting corners on construction projects for years, bribing inspectors, using substandard materials, lying on permits. It's all here." "And Vanessa?" I asked. "A trail of destroyed lives, former friends, ex-boyfriends, employees her father fired at her request. She's been doing this for years, Emerson. You're not her first victim." I looked at the evidence, then at my husband. I want her to understand what it feels like, not just losing money or status. I want her to feel as powerless as she made me feel. Christopher nodded. "Then let's make it happen. But we do this carefully, legally. I won't let you compromise your integrity for revenge." "It's not revenge," I said quietly. "It's justice." The plan came together over the next week. Christopher, in his capacity as CEO of Ashford Enterprises, called an emergency board meeting at Metropolitan General Hospital. What most people didn't know, including Gregory Pierce, was that Christopher had been quietly buying shares in the hospital for months. He now controlled 65%. He was the majority owner, the chairman of the board, and nobody knew it because he'd done it through shell companies and investment firms. The meeting was called to address staff treatment concerns and administrative failures. Mr. Peterson was told to attend. Gregory Pierce, as a major donor, was invited, and Vanessa, always eager to watch people squirm, came along. I was invited too, as the suspended staff member at the center of the complaint. I'll never forget walking into that boardroom. I'd dressed carefully that morning, not in my usual casual clothes, but in an elegant dress that Christopher had bought me for charity galas. I wore my real wedding ring, the one with a diamond so large it caught the light with every movement. I'd styled my hair professionally and walked in with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. Vanessa's face when she saw me was almost worth everything she'd put me through. Confusion, then anger, then something like fear. "What is she doing here?" Vanessa demanded. "I thought she was fired." "Suspended," Mr. Peterson corrected nervously, "and she was invited by the new board chairman." "New chairman?" Gregory Pierce frowned. "Since when? I thought Thompson was chairman." "Mr. Thompson retired last month," came a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. Christopher walked in, commanding the room instantly with his presence. He wore a perfectly tailored suit and carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who owned everything around him. "Allow me to introduce myself properly," he said, taking his seat at the head of the table. "Christopher Ashford, CEO of Ashford Enterprises and majority shareholder of Metropolitan General Hospital. I'm the new chairman of the board." The color drained from Gregory's face. He knew that name. Everyone in business knew that name. "Mr. Ashford," Gregory stammered, standing up to shake his hand. "This is unexpected. I didn't realize you had interest in healthcare." "I have interests in many things," Christopher replied coolly, ignoring the offered handshake, "including the well-being of my wife." Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. "Wife?" Christopher looked directly at me and smiled, the warm smile he reserved only for me. "Emerson, would you join me, please?" I stood and walked to his side. He took my hand, the one wearing the ring, and held it up for everyone to see. "This is my wife, Emerson Ashford. Some of you know her as Emerson Cole, the nurse who was recently suspended for refusing to kneel before a patient who'd just thrown water in her face." Vanessa's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Gregory looked like he might be sick. "Now," Christopher continued, his voice turning ice cold, "let's talk about what's been happening in my hospital, shall we?" What followed was the most satisfying hour of my life. Christopher presented everything. Video footage from hospital security cameras showing Vanessa's abuse, not just toward me but toward other staff members over the course of her stay. Audio recordings of her mocking patients in the hallway, screenshots of her social media posts bragging about putting poor people in their place. Then came the real bombshell. Christopher revealed that he'd been investigating Gregory's company for weeks. Ashford Enterprises owned the land for Pierce Real Estate's 3 biggest current projects. All 3 contracts were under review for termination due to ethical concerns and potential fraud. "You can't do this," Gregory said, his voice shaking. "Those projects represent 80% of my company's current revenue. You'll bankrupt me." "Yes," Christopher said simply. "I can, and unless things change dramatically in the next few minutes, I will." Vanessa found her voice finally, and it came out as a scream. "This is insane! You're going to destroy my father's company because your wife is too sensitive? She's just a nurse. She's nobody!" The room went silent again. Even Gregory looked horrified at his daughter's words. I stood up slowly and walked toward Vanessa. She actually backed away from me, pressing against the wall. "Just a nurse," I repeated softly. "You know what's funny about that? My mother was just a nurse too. She died in this hospital 7 years ago. Do you know why?" Vanessa shook her head, eyes wide. "She died because there was a shortage of staff on her shift. The hospital had cut nursing positions to save money so they could afford renovations to the VIP wing. The wing that your father donated money to build. My mother had a heart attack during a double shift. She shouldn't have been working, and there was nobody available to help her quickly enough." I let that sink in for a moment. I became a nurse to honor her memory, to be the kind of person she raised me to be, someone who helps others, who shows compassion, who treats every human being with dignity. And you? You threw water in my face because you thought I was beneath you. You destroyed a free clinic that served hundreds of vulnerable people. You've spent your entire life hurting anyone you perceived as weaker than you. Tears were streaming down my face now, but my voice remained steady. "So yes, I'm just a nurse. But I'm also someone who knows the value of hard work, compassion, and treating people with respect. What are you, Vanessa? Take away your father's money and what's left?" She had no answer. She just stood there crying, her expensive makeup running down her face. Christopher stood and addressed the room. "Here's what's going to happen. Mr. Peterson, you're terminated effective immediately for allowing staff abuse. Gregory Pierce, your donations to this hospital are no longer welcome, and all contracts with Ashford Enterprises are under review. Whether they're terminated depends entirely on what happens next." "What do you want?" Gregory asked desperately. "Accountability," I said, speaking up. "The free clinic that was shut down, your foundation is going to fund it for the next 10 years. fully fund it with enough money to expand services. You're going to personally apologize to every staff member your daughter abused, and Vanessa is going to do 200 hours of community service at a public hospital, working alongside the nurses she treated like dirt. And if we refuse? Vanessa spat, trying to salvage some dignity. Christopher's smile was cold. Then I'll release all of this footage to every news outlet in the country. I'll terminate every contract. I'll make sure that everyone knows exactly who Gregory Pierce and his daughter really are. Your father's company will be finished, and you'll be famous for all the wrong reasons. The choice is yours. They agreed. What else could they do? 3 months later, I stood in the newly renovated free clinic, now called the Margaret Cole Community Health Center, after my mother. It was 3 times larger than before, with state-of-the-art equipment and enough staff to serve everyone who needed help. Vanessa had completed her community service. I heard from colleagues that she'd actually been humbled by the experience, though I had my doubts about how long that would last. Gregory's company survived, barely, and he'd become much more careful about his business practices. As for me, I went back to work at Metropolitan General. I still wear my scrubs, still take the bus sometimes, still try to live as normally as possible, but now everyone knows who I am. Some people treat me differently because of it, which is exactly why I hid my identity in the first place. But I learned something important through all of this. Humility and kindness aren't about hiding who you are or accepting abuse. They're about choosing to see the humanity in everyone, even when they can't see it in you. Vanessa tried to break me because she thought I was powerless. What she didn't realize is that real power doesn't come from money or status. It comes from knowing your own worth and standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. That day she threw water in my face was the day she sealed her own fate. Not because of who my husband was, but because she finally targeted someone who refused to stay down. So that's how the millionaire's spoiled daughter learned that you should never judge someone by their appearance or profession. She thought she could humiliate me because I was just a nurse, not knowing that my worth was never defined by my husband's wealth but by my own character. If this story taught you something about respect, karma, or treating people with dignity, smash that like button. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in my situation. And don't forget to subscribe because I've got more stories about entitled people getting exactly what they deserve. Remember, be kind, stay humble, and never underestimate anyone. You never know whose life you're messing with. Until next time, this is Emerson, reminding you that class isn't about money. It's about how you treat others.